And here's the snap. Hands it to Audric Estime, and that is and should be a touchdown. Here we go. Bryson Mars has got his back behind him. It is Jaquindon Jackson. Here's the snap. Bryson Barnes looking deep. He's got a man. It's caught! He's gone! Touchdown early!
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Cooper Naylor. And so, as you can see, this is not a typical episode. I'm just recording this real quick. I really wanted to dive into what my thoughts are after the first round playoff games this weekend. And my initial thoughts are there was not one game that truly was entertaining. And I think this first round, and I mean, we didn't know what the 12-team playoff would look like. All I knew beforehand was that it was a mistake having a 12-team playoff because it's too many. And you could clearly see that 12 teams was too many. And the reason why, you have seeds 9 through 12, all four of them got smashed. Okay? Tennessee, they went out and talked all the crap that they wanted to. And then they turn around and Ohio State just dominated them up there in Columbus. Ohio State, granted, was coming off of let's be honest, a bad loss to a Michigan team that is terrible. So, you got to give credit to Ohio State. They played a great football game last night. You got the 10 seed Indiana the score is not going to indicate how bad this game was, but Curtis Rourke, he had a bad game. Indiana they looked terrible. And they scored 14 points in the last few minutes that were just garbage time points. So, I don't want anybody telling me Indiana really looked good in this game because they did not. They looked terrible. And then SMU, oh my gosh, I did that whole game yesterday. SMU looked like complete garbage. They did not. Here's the thing. Indiana and SMU, definitely, them two, they didn't play like they should even be out there on the field with both Notre Dame and Penn State. That's how bad it was. And then when you talk about Clemson, you got to give them credit. They probably played the best game of the weekend, and it was still a blowout. It still wasn't even close. Texas controlled that game. And so, what is my initial thoughts as to how can we fix this? Well, first off, I just want to be honest. And you gotta be honest with yourself, okay? Indiana, yes, they were 11-1. Who did they beat all year? Who did they actually go and beat throughout the regular season? Nobody. And here's the reason, folks, that I never complained about Indiana. And the reason why is because I knew, even though they were 11-1, they were pretty much a lock into the playoff. It wasn't going to matter what anything happened around the country. I knew they were a lock because I knew when it came down to it, they're not going to leave an 11-1 team out of the playoff. But here's the fact of the matter. Indiana, going into the playoff, the only team that was worth anything that they played against was Ohio State. And in that game, they got dominated by Ohio State. Now, when it comes to Indiana, they had a great year. First year with Kirk Cignetti as the head coach, and they made the college football playoff. I mean, hey, they finished the year 11-2 in Kirk Cignetti's first year. That is incredible. So Indiana, I mean, yes, you played a terrible football game, but you had a great season. Hold your head high and come back next year, and we'll see how you do. Now, when you talk about SMU. Again, who did you beat all year that was worth anything? Nobody. The 2 games, and here's the crazy thing. The 2 games everybody talked about, they lost those games. They were like, oh, well, you played BYU close and you played Clemson close, but you didn't win. So I understand we're rewarding a team that went to the conference championship game, but we're throwing out the first half of the ACC championship game where SMU looked like garbage. Clemson stalked them in the first half. We're going to throw that away and forget about that. What are we doing? And then allowing an ACC champion, Clemson, who, yes, give them credit. They played a good game other than getting blown out to Texas. They played the best game this weekend as far as from the losing teams. But you're going to put a 3-loss ACC champion in the college football playoff, knowing good and well they have no chance. What are we doing? Like, seriously. And then what is this seeding? What is the seeding we have here? Because, okay, look at this. When you look at the playoff, which I gave you the bracket yesterday, you have, this is crazy. Texas is going to have to play Arizona State, who got a bye just because they won their conference. Penn State's going to have to play Boise State. Those 2 teams right there, Texas and Penn State, have the easiest road to the semifinals. It's not even close. So what are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we basically sitting here and rewarding mediocrity? Here's just my thoughts. Okay? That's what I've been giving you, but this is also something I think you need to consider. 12 teams, and we've got 2 ACC schools that just got dominated. You've got a Big 12 team that's going to have to play Texas and will most likely get dominated. You got Boise State, which and this is crazy, but I feel like Boise State has the best chance out of Arizona State, Clemson, and SMU. Boise State has the best chance to actually win a game in the playoff. So what are we doing? What? I don't understand this. Now, of course, we didn't know what this is going to look like. Okay? They threw this out here, and quite honestly, this committee confused the crap out of every single person in this country because they don't tell you what their criteria is for how they're going to rank it. They don't tell you how the playoffs going to work. We don't know. So here's the crazy thing, okay? And you got to ask yourself, are we looking for the 12 most deserving teams, or are we looking for the 12 best teams in college football? Because if we're going to go with the 12 best teams, we did not get that in this playoff. And this is going to make people mad. But record doesn't always reflect who are the best teams. Look, and some people out there are going to yell, oh, well, strength of schedule, it's all biased anyway because you put all the SEC teams. No. Go watch these teams and watch how they play. Okay? If you are going to put the 12 best teams in there, you've got to consider strength of schedule, and you've got to consider this. Indiana played against Ohio State. Indiana got crushed by Ohio State. SMU played at home and could not beat BYU, who wasn't anywhere near the playoff when it was all said and done. Okay? Now, again, you're going to sit there and be like, well, Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Alabama lost to Oklahoma. Well, let's throw out Alabama out of the side right here, right now. Okay? Okay, what about Ole Miss? Well, you're going to yell about the Kentucky loss and the Florida loss. First off, the Florida loss, don't give me any of that. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at the first half of Florida's season compared to the second half of their season, that second half, they were a much better football team. So don't give me all this about, Florida's record. Because Florida at the end of the year looked a whole lot better than what they did at the beginning of the year. That's just me being honest. But yes, Alabama and Ole Miss, yeah, I see why you left them out. Here's the team that probably got the biggest kick in the face when it came to this, and that's South Carolina. And yes, I was not a huge advocate about South Carolina, but you got to go back and you got to really, truly look at things. And you know what? I did a lot of diving into this. South Carolina, yeah, they probably did get the biggest kick in the face. And the reason why I say that, had they not lost to LSU, because they got robbed in that game, they probably would have made the playoff. And quite frankly, they probably could have made it to the second round or the quarterfinal round. And you know why? If you go look at how they played at the end of the season, South Carolina was probably one of the best teams in college football. That's the truth. That is just the truth of where we're at right now. Okay? You had a close loss on the road at Alabama, and then Ole Miss dominated you. Okay. But they have quality losses. They played tough teams. South Carolina also, keep in mind, beat a playoff team, Clemson. And if you want to talk about Alabama's wins, Alabama took down the SEC champion Georgia Bulldogs. Alabama, they beat South Carolina. Alabama beat Missouri, who was ranked. So, those are the three SEC schools. But personally, if you go off eye test and if you go watch Miami play, yeah, they didn't look great because they had a lot of close games. But at the end of the day, they probably would have done better than SMU. Now, I'm not making this video to say, SMU and Indiana and Clemson had terrible years. Because no, they had great years. But keep in mind, Alabama had a great year. Ole Miss had a great year. South Carolina had a great year. Miami had a great year. But it wasn't good enough to make the playoff. And quite frankly, when we created this 12-team model, we just ruined the sport. And the reason why I say that is because now, like I said, like my rant a second ago, you get teams in there that, quite frankly, do not have a chance to actually legitimately win anything. Quite frankly, Arizona State has no chance to win the championship. Boise State has no chance to win the championship. So you legitimately have like six schools in this country that legitimately could go win a championship. And the reason why I'm not complaining about Tennessee, because I got to be honest with you, I do believe Tennessee, with the 12-team playoff, they were one of the 12 best teams. Yeah, they got destroyed by Ohio State, but they, I think, were one of the 12 best teams, and they deserve to be there. After Tennessee, which they were at 9, the last 3 spots, I don't think you got to go with the 12 best teams. Throw out the whole thing about deserving, because deserving should not be the sole reason why a team gets in there. You got to put the 12 best teams in this playoff. It's not about who deserves it. It's about who actually has the chance to win. Who are the 12 best teams? So, when you consider all that, I mean, that's my complaints with this whole thing. Now, what do I think is going to potentially happen here in the future? Well, if they don't change this format next season, the SEC and the Big Ten, they will break away from the current system. The SEC and the Big Ten will be like, well, you know what? We're going on our own. We're going to go do our own thing. And we're going to have our own playoff of our own. And we're going to go stick it to you. And you know what I say to that? I don't blame them at all. Because when you, at the end of the day, you see who's going to be in that semifinal round, it's going to be only SEC and Big Ten schools playing in the semifinals of the college football playoff. And quite frankly, I know I picked Notre Dame to make the playoff, make the championship, but let's be honest. If everything goes the way it should, you're going to have Georgia and either you got Texas, Oregon, or Ohio State that'll be there. SEC versus Big Ten or SEC versus SEC for the national championship. SEC and the Big Ten will break away from the current system. They will go do their own playoff. And quite frankly, what they'll probably end up doing, they probably won't do a 12-team. They will probably do like either a 4 or 6-team playoff themselves. And what will probably end up happening between them two, they're going to say this, okay? Because here's what they do if they do a 12-team or a 4-team playoff. They're going to take the two best teams from the conferences that would have had a chance to win the conference championship game. Because let's be honest, I don't want it to happen, but it's going to happen. Conference championship games are about to be thrown out the window because the way this 12-team model has it, conference championship games, yeah, it matters, but it doesn't matter. Because you don't have to win your conference championship game to get in the college football playoff. SMU lost their conference championship game and made the college football playoff. It don't matter. They would have been securely in if they didn't play. And it would have, the whole controversy would have went away. SEC and Big Ten will go do a 4-team playoff. So it would have been Georgia and Texas, Oregon, Penn State this year if they did a 4-team playoff. What they'll do is they'll do this. You would have had your Oregon-Penn State matchup, and you would have had your Georgia-Texas matchup. And then you would have had Oregon and Georgia play for the real national championship game because the SEC and the Big Ten are the two best conferences in college football. That would have been the true national championship game. Then the 12-team playoff you currently have, what the model would probably be, you have Big 12 and ACC be the leaders of this thing. Then what you would probably have, because you would have, I would say they'd probably keep the whole buys with the conference champions, Mountain West, or, you get 2 Group 5 conferences get that last bid. So what would it have been? Most likely would have been Boise State and Army get an automatic bye. You would have to look at a totally different playoff if the SEC and the Big Ten were to break away. So folks, and don't get me wrong, this is not coming from the standpoint of because I do have a favorite team, but I'm not going to reveal that to you because I'm going to be unbiased and tell you what I think about the sport from a non-biased standpoint. It's me coming from as a college football fan, not as a fan of my favorite team. This is a college football fan that is upset with how the games went last night and on Friday night. This is coming from a standpoint of we had a 4-team playoff that always got the best teams in there. Now, there's argument Alabama could have got in ahead of TCU a couple years ago. But at the end of the day, Bama probably would have done better than TCU. But TCU ended up winning a playoff game. So, that could have – we'll never know. But this year, I think we do know. And that is they did not get the 12 best teams in this playoff. Quite frankly, folks, that is a sad reality for a sport that used to set itself apart from every other sport that ever existed. It was a sport where it focused on the fact that you had to win. And there was no other in between. Winning was important in this sport. And folks, because of a lot of different factors, college football has lost itself. It is now, and what it will always be from this point on, it's just a developmental league you could say developmental league for the NFL. You could say NFL Junior. You could say anything you want to say. Because this is no longer the college football of old where everyone had to go win. And you actually stuck around and tried to fight for a position on the starting roster, on the depth chart. Now you can go play wherever you want to and start whenever you want to. Sad reality, folks. College football has changed drastically, and I'm going to continue covering it because I love college football. But it's not going to stop me from sitting here and criticizing what needs to be criticized. And folks, like I said before, what a sad reality we live in right now, where college football and its importance and how it used to be, if you had 2 losses, you had no chance. You got to win, and you got to win convincingly to have a chance. So, folks, that's just my reaction to this whole thing. I know this has been a long video of me ranting, but I think it has to be said. So I want to know your comments below, because I want to know if you agree with me, and if you disagree, I'm open. I want to hear what your argument is for this playoff. If you sit here and tell me, oh, they deserve to be there. But again, are we talking about deserving, or are we talking about the best teams? What are we talking about? So, thanks for watching, everybody. Goodbye.